Welcome to the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ. And if this is your very first time checking out my podcast, first and foremost, I want to let you guys know this is not just an NBA podcast, okay? I also like to cover college and also a little bit of high school as well. My future college episodes are coming up pretty soon here at the end of December. About that week during Christmas, I'll probably release another college episode where I'll be talking about some of the college teams, college players, and also some prospects as well from high school and in college, okay? But if you're interested in watching any past content about college or international or high school, please go ahead and check it out. I believe it's episode 5 where I talked about some FIBA prospects, but also I think it's episode 16 is where I did college as well. So if you're interested in any of that, I'll leave the link right up in the corner of the video, okay? Now, before we get started on today's episode, I kind of just want to give you guys the parameters. Again, if you've never checked out my videos, I just want to give you the parameters of the 4 segments that I'll be covering. So number 1 is a segment I like to call PJ's Echelon. Now, in this segment, essentially, it's just my power rankings, okay? Week in, week out, I'm doing my power rankings. I'm also giving you my kind of thoughts on each team as I'm going through my power rankings. But the criteria I use for these power rankings is I do statistically where they stand, I do their record, I do the eye test, and I do the strength of schedule, okay? So just keep those 4 parameters in your mind as we go through that segment. Second segment I like to go through, it's a segment I like to call What's New. Now, in What's New, essentially, it's me just giving you any news that I came across or any statistical history thing that may have happened that I've come across, or even it could just be me ranting about something, okay? So that's kind of a freestyle segment, but that's What's New, okay? Another segment that I go over, it's Games of the Week. So Games of the Week, as we go through the season, obviously these games will have more significance throughout the year. But right now, it's me basically just giving you guys games that, like I said, I'm really paying attention to, I really liked, or games of some type of significance. Like the game today will have some type of significance that I cover. And moving forward, like I said, it's games of some type of significance or games that I just really, really enjoyed, okay? The last segment is my segment that I like to call Rookie Talk. Now, in this segment, essentially, I'm just talking about the rookies, okay? I'm talking about rookies that I like, rookies that have somewhat maybe disappointed or I don't like. So that's Rookie Talk, okay? Now, we can get ready and go ahead and dive into the first segment, okay? And the first segment is PJ's Echelon. Now, with PJ's Echelon, again, I'm just going to go over what I like to use for my criteria when I'm going through my power rankings. So I go based off of the eye test. I go off of their strength of schedule during that week. I go off of statistically where they stand. And then I also go off of like the team's record as well. Okay. So just keep that in mind as I go through my top 10 list and understand I'm not a perfect man, but I am a progressive man. And with that being said, my list is also a progressive list, okay? So just keep that in mind as we go through. And just so you guys know, I'm recording this on December 3rd. It's a Tuesday. It's 2 p.m. And yes, I understand there's games later on in the day. Okay, I'm fully clear of that. I'm fully aware of that, okay? So let's just dive straight into it, okay? I'm not going to waste any more of you guys' time. Let's make this happen. So my number 1 rated team this week, this team is 17-4, and that is the Boston Celtics. Boston right now, they're 3rd in offensive efficiency, they're 8th in defensive efficiency, and they're 1st in net rating. So they lost to Cleveland, but there was no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White, and for me, they still played a really competitive game, and about midway through the 4th, they were still leading the game. So for me, like they just played a competitive game, okay? And they still look like the best team in my opinion. And obviously, I'll deep dive more into that specific game against Cleveland later on in my Games of the Week episode. That's the game actually I decided to cover this week because it had somewhat significance to it. But that's besides the point, okay? So anyways, Boston for me right now, they're number 1 for me. They're actually tied for averaging the fewest turnovers per game in the NBA. At 12. But I still don't like how they take 53s a game. I just think that's way too many in my opinion, but they knock them down. They're actually 7-3 against teams that have above a 500 record, that are above 500. So just let you know they're handling teams. And then they're also 10-1 against teams that are below 500. So Boston, they just take care of business. And for me, they're still number 1 on my power rankings, okay? Number 2 on my power rankings, this team is 18-3. And that is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland right now, they're 2nd in offensive efficiency. They're 11th in defensive efficiency, and they're 3rd in net rating. So I kept them at number 2. Yes, they did lose twice to Atlanta last week, which I'm not going to say they're bad losses, but they just weren't good losses in my opinion. Okay. I'm not going to say they're bad because Atlanta's not like a horrible team. Shout out to my guy, Echelon Johnson. They're not a horrible team, but they did lose to them. So I did have to ding them a little bit for that. But they did beat Boston, and that's still a solid win, even if Jaylen Brown and Derek White did not play. That's still a solid win, so I gave them slight credit for that. I'm really looking forward to their game against Denver this week. Otherwise, for the rest of the week, they should win the rest of their games pretty easily. For me, they're still number 2 again this week. They're first in the NBA in field goal percentage at 51%. They're first in three-point percentage at 40.5%. Like, this is a really good offensive team. So I got Cleveland number 2 again this week. We'll see how they do, against Denver. So we'll see. Anyways, that's number 2. Number 3 on my list, this team is 15-5, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma, up to this point, they're 10th in offensive efficiency. They're first in defensive efficiency, and they're second in net rating. Yeah, they lost to Houston, but they had 3 days off. Houston had 3 days off leading up to that game, and OKC only had 1 day. So I didn't want to kill OKC for losing to Houston at all, because there's no slouch. There's nothing to be embarrassed about losing to Houston at all. But you got to give context, okay? Houston had 3 days of rest. OKC only had 1. So I didn't kill them for that. But I did give Houston a little credit for it, of course, because a win's a win, but you got to give context. Context matters in these wins, obviously, okay? It's not important. It's important not to just focus on the headline, but read the book as well, okay? That's something I like to say when it comes to detailing. Anyways, OKC, also in my opinion, this last week has just played better competition than Houston did, so that's why I gave them the slight edge. They're also first steal and forced turnovers in the NBA. They're first in the steals. They're fourth in blocks. They give up the 4th fewest fast break points in the NBA as well, and they also give up the fewest points in the paint too. So this team is just lights out defensively. And yeah, OKC's rolling. But let's go to number 4 on my list. I just named them. This team is 15-6, and that is the Houston Rockets. Houston, right now, they're 15th in offensive efficiency. They're 2nd in defensive efficiency, and they're 4th in net rating. H-Town, stand up. Okay, I've been screaming this Houston horn since about week 2 of the NBA season now. I think they've been on my top 10 list. And this team they just continue just to make me, they continue to impress me week after week. Anyways, they're first in rebounding in the NBA. They're 6th in blocks. They're 8th in steals. They're tied for 2nd in allowing the lowest three-point percentage at 34%. They allow the 2nd lowest field goal percentage at 43%. They average the 4th fewest assists, which, hopefully that can come up a little bit for them, because to me that just screams a lot of ISO ball. But yeah, they average the 4th fewest assists. But they are also 9-4 against teams above 500. They're also on a 3-game winning streak, and they're also only a half a game out of first place in the West. So shout out to H-Town. I'm still waiting for Mr. Jalen Green to improve his efficiency, because that just has not happened yet, and it truly hasn't happened any time in his career. So we'll see if, as this season progresses, that he can, find lightning in a bottle, okay? Because that's, to me, somebody that they really need him to wake up offensively if this team really wants to compete in the playoffs and for years to come. Anyways, number 5 on my list, this team is 15-7, and that is the Orlando Magic. Orlando right now, they're 22nd in offensive efficiency. They're 3rd in defensive efficiency, and they're 8th in net rating. They're 9-0 at home right now. They're 2nd in the NBA in blocks. They're tied for 3rd in steals. They give up the 2nd fewest points in the paint. They're 3rd in forced turnovers per game. They play the 5th slowest pace in the league as well. And in my opinion, that just means, and the pace they play right now, they play at a 97.7% of pace. And to me, that just lets me know they're preparing for the playoffs, in my opinion, at that pace. So, but also, they're sporting the longest winning streak right now in basketball. They're tied actually with Memphis, and that's a 6-game winning streak. And P5, he's on his way, man. Mr. Paulo Banchero is on his way. I think he'll be back probably in the next, I said last week, 2 to 3 weeks. I still think about 2 weeks he'll be back. And this team, I expect the month of January for this team to rip and really try to challenge for that number 2 seed in the East. We'll see if they can catch Boston or Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland last year dealt with injuries, so who knows if they're going to be able to stay afloat like they have been so far this year. For the most part, they've been healthy. I believe Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell or both of them have missed a few games so far, but for the most part, this team has been pretty healthy. So we'll see if Orlando can catch them. But Orlando, for me right now, they're number 5 on my list. Okay, number 6 on my list. This team is 14-7, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis right now, they're 5th in offensive efficiency, they're 6th in defensive efficiency, and they're 5th in net rating. They're, like I just said, they're also on a 6-game winning streak, and they're tied with the Magic for the longest in the league. I know I keep saying this week after week, but this is the deepest team in basketball. Okay, I've been saying this since the second week of the NBA. I still feel that way. This is a deep team, in my opinion. They're actually 12-3 in 10-point games. So, meaning, in my opinion, they're blowing people out. Okay, 10 of their 14 wins, they've been blowing people out. They're 10-3 in those games. They lost 3 of them, but they're blowing people out. They play the 3rd fastest pace in the league at 104. Pace rating. They're 1st in blocks, they're 1st in assists, they're 3rd in field goal percentage, they're 3rd in rebounds, but also they're 3rd in turnovers per game at 17, which is kind of concerning, but I don't know if that's pace or because these people are being in and out of the lineups, but that's something to monitor, obviously, because in the playoffs, you can't be turning over the ball. So that's something I'll be paying attention with Memphis moving forward, but for me, this is a top 6 team in my opinion. Shout out to the Grizzlies, man. Number 7 on my list, this team is 13-8, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas right now, they're 4th in offensive efficiency. They're 9th in defensive efficiency, and they're 7th in net rating. They're 5-1 this season without Luka, compared to 4-8 last year. Last week, I showed some love to Najee Marshall for what he was doing. This week, I'm going to show some love to PJ Washington because not last game. Last game, the streak ended, but before that, he was on a 5-game streak. Having 5 consecutive games of a double-double. And the most he ever had in a season was 10. So for him to have 5 straight games of having a double-double, I have to give him some love this week. I also want to show some love to Quentin Grimes as well. Quentin Grimes has had 3 straight games of 20 or more, and that's the longest streak in his career. Luka came back on Sunday, and he was doing his thing against Portland. Portland put up a pretty good fight, though, on Sunday. Shout out to the Blazers. They put up a pretty good fight. But anyways, Dallas won that game. And Luka's back. This is a top 10 team in my opinion. Dallas is rolling, man. Dallas is rolling. And I won't be surprised if they trend up higher as the season goes. And who knows, maybe next week they'll be higher on my list. But that's Dallas at 7. Number 8, this team is 12-7, and that is the Golden State Warriors. Golden State right now, they're 8th in offensive efficiency. They're 5th in defensive efficiency, and they're 9th in net rating. They're on a 4-game losing streak, so they've been sliding down my rankings week after week. Steph is dealing with a bilateral knee tendonitis, which for me is very concerning. He said it's nothing to worry about, but in my opinion, that is something to worry about really with his age and the way he plays the game of basketball. So that's something to monitor. Truth be told, I was never high on the Warriors. I've seen a lot of people trying to say, can Golden State win a 5th this year? Like, come on, man. Let's be real. If you're watching basketball, if you're watching these games and you understand their strength of schedule, like Golden State had a pretty easy schedule earlier in the season. I literally pointed that out. Actually, a couple weeks back on my episode, I was like, Golden State's had a pretty light schedule, but I still got to respect what they've done, So now they're coming back down to earth. I honestly feel like they're probably going to slip again, but we'll see. We'll see how the rest of this week goes. But yeah, I got Golden State at 8 for right now. Number 9 on my list, this team is 11-8, and that's the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix right now, they're 13th in the NBA in offensive efficiency. They're 20th in defensive efficiency. They're 17th in net rating. So they were 9th last week for me. I kept them at 9 because they're 10-2 with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in the lineup, with some really good wins. Okay, they weren't just beating up on weak teams. They did lose to the Nets, but then they came back and they beat up on the Warriors pretty handily, in my opinion. They also have a lot of winnable games, in my opinion, this week. So I do expect them potentially to be higher on my rankings next week. Otherwise, to me, this is still a top 10 team. I didn't freak out to them losing to the Nets because I believe that was the first game KD and Bradley Beal came back. Bradley Beal, I believe, is out again. This motherfucker, he's always hurt. And this is why I didn't pick them to get out of the West, because I just couldn't trust the health of Devin Booker, KD, and Bradley Beal. Anyways, they're number 9 on my list. Shout out to Phoenix. Number 10 on my list. This team is 12-8, and that is the New York Knicks. New York right now, they're first in offensive efficiency. They're 22nd in defensive efficiency, and they're 6th in net rating. They got blitzed by Dallas last week on national TV, and it was just funny because literally leading up to that game, if you watch my last week episode, I literally said that was going to be a game that I was going to be paying attention to closely. And yeah, they got destroyed by Dallas. Dallas handled them. But I kept them in my top 10 because they're still a great offensive team. They're second right now in the NBA in field goal percentage. They're second in the NBA in three-point percentage. But also they're tied for fourth. They're also fourth. They also average the fourth fewest turnovers in the NBA at 13 a game. They play the second slowest pace in the league, which in my opinion just lets me know they're a really good half-court offensive team. It's really weird seeing a Tibbs team be this good offensively. So it's just kind of funny. It's kind of funny to think about Tibbs team being this good offensively. They are 3-5 against teams above 500, so that's something I'll be kind of keeping my eyes on and seeing if that record improves as time goes on. But that's something to kind of throw at you guys as well. They do play Orlando tonight, so I will be watching that game closely as well. And anyways, New York, they're my 10th spot. Teams that are on the bubble for me, I still got the Milwaukee Bucks on the bubble. I still need to see them against better competition. They play Boston, I believe, sometime this week. If they just are competitive against Boston, if it's like a pretty close game, I might just put them in my top 10 next week, depending on how some of the other teams do. But yeah, I just got to see them against comp. Okay, I got to see them against comp. If they can go 3-1 or 4-0 this next week, they'll be in my top 10 this week, but I just can't move them yet, okay? They got to show me against some actual good competition. And shout out to Giannis. Giannis is he's literally doing what he did last year. Pretty much, basically is what he's doing. He's dominating right now, Another team that I had also on consideration is the Clippers. So I first and foremost want to give a shout out to James Harden. Yeah, his efficiency is not where it needs to be, but he is being aggressive, and that's literally all I said I wanted to see out of him during my Clippers season preview. And if you're interested in watching that episode, you can go check it out. It's the Pacific Division season preview. You can fast forward and watch the Clippers part if you want to watch that. But I literally talked about that in that episode about James Harden, where I was like, I just want to see him being aggressive. Okay, and he's been doing that. So don't get too enamored by his field goal percentage. Like, if you're watching the games, he's affecting the game, okay? So shout out to James Harden, and shout out to the Clippers, and the Claw's on his way, man. Kawhi's on his way back. I don't have any sources or anything. I think Kawhi Leonard's going to be back. I'm going to say by the end of December to early January, I think Kawhi Leonard's going to be back. Is what I'm assuming. I'm just guessing, okay? So I got them right on the outside because shout out to Ty Lue too. He's kept this team afloat during this time period, Shout out to Ty Lue and shout out to the Los Angeles Clippers. Like I said, they're on one of my bubble teams. But you let me know, what teams do you guys have on the bubble? Let me know what your top 10 teams are down in the comment section below, okay? So that's PJ's Echelon. My next segment is going to be What's New. Now, in this segment of What's New, if you didn't get to watch earlier part of this episode where I explained what's new was, I'm going to explain it one more time. So what's new essentially is just a segment where I'm giving you NBA news, or I'm ranting about something, or I'm kind of just freestyling, okay? So just keep that in mind, or I'm just giving you some type of like historical, statistical thing that may have happened. So that's what what's new is about, okay? It's kind of a freestyle in a way. So today on What's New, I kind of just wanted to throw something at you guys really quick. Something that I think is kind of interesting and that I don't really see people talking about is that about mid-December is when the people that signed extensions or that signed a contract over the summer, they're eligible to be traded. So I think we're really going to see the trade market and trade buzz really, really pick up in the coming weeks. And obviously we know what teams are probably going to be sellers. We know it's probably going to be like the Blazers. I think even potentially, the Pelicans, the Nets, potentially the Raptors. I'm trying to think of another team. Oh, Utah is going to be another team. Brooklyn. I already said Brooklyn. The Bulls. So it's just something to keep your eyes on. We're going to start seeing teams. We're going to start seeing teams and players. We're going to start seeing movement, I think, in the coming weeks as the market opens up. And usually about 25 games is when we kind of have an idea of like what teams are competitors, what teams are playoff teams, what teams are rebuilding teams, what teams are lottery teams. So we should start seeing people move for sure, because I think there's quite a bit of people on teams that are out of there, okay, in my opinion. So something to just keep on you guys' radar. coming weeks, that's what's to come. Something I kind of want to give a shout out really quick to Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine became the Chicago Bulls all-time leader in three-pointers made. He passed Kurt Heinrich with his 1,050th three-pointer made for the Bulls. He did that a couple nights ago. Another thing is Brandon Ingram just signed with Clutch Sports. So we already know what Clutch is all about. We know what Brandon Ingram's on an expired contract. We know he wants to be in a winning environment. It'll be interesting to see where BI goes. I can see a place where he goes back to the Lakers. I can see that. I can see him potentially going to play. Let me think. What other team could use a Brandon Ingram? I don't know. I would have to think about it. I got to think about it more. But for sure, BI's out of there. We know he's out of there. He signed with Clutch Sports. Something I just want to throw at you guys. Shout out to Jared McCade and Jalen Wells. They actually won Rookies of the Month. Shout out to Victor and Dyson Daniels. They won Defensive Players of the Month. Shout out to Shea and Jason Tatum. They won Players of the Month. And I just want to let you guys know that a new episode of my college/high school segments, those are coming. I'm thinking about recording it probably during that week of Christmas and just giving you guys, and during that episode, essentially what I'm just going to give you guys is really just like an update on the prospects, the 30 prospects that I told you guys I was going to be keeping my eyes on. I'll give you guys an update on some of those prospects and how they're looking, how they're doing in college right now. But also I'll give you guys also an update on some of the recruiting trails because there's some interesting things that's going on in that. And there's some high rated kids that recently committed. There's some kids that are reclassifying. So yeah, there's things that are coming up that I just want to throw at you guys. And so, I just wanted to let you guys know that episode is coming. Okay. So that is what's new for this week. Now, if there was things in what's new that you guys thought were interesting or like any NBA news that happened that you guys want to share with everybody else, leave down in the comment section below. Yes, I can easily sit here probably for 45 to an hour and just give you a bunch of new information. But I'm trying to keep these episodes about 25 to 35 minutes, not to use too much of you guys' time up. But yeah, so that's the information I gave you this week for what's new. And again, down in the comment section below, let me know what things did you guys find interesting over this last week in the NBA. Okay. Other than that, we'll go to the next segment, and the next segment is Games of the Week. Okay. Now, with Games of the Week, if you didn't get to watch this episode earlier on in the episode, I'm just going to give you the parameters of that again if you missed that, okay? So Games of the Week essentially is just me giving you games that I really liked watching or games that had some type of significance to it. Obviously, for most of the part up to this point of the season, I've just done games that I've really enjoyed watching. But as the season goes on, obviously, standings, seeding, and all that stuff is going to start to matter. And today's the first one where it's a meaningful game, in my opinion. So we're just going to cover one game in this episode today. Normally, I do two. I usually do about 2 to 3 games a week. But this week, I'm only going to do one just because I've been super busy in my personal life over the last week. I recently moved, so I've been dealing with all that and organizing all that stuff. And then I went to Vegas last week. I was in Vegas last week watching Duke versus Kansas. So I just haven't had that much time to like really dive into these games. And I want to be very open, honest, and transparent with you guys when I do watch these games. I don't want to just sit up here and fake the funk and give you guys games just to give you games. I want to give you games that I actually watched and I actually, found some type of significance in them. Anyways, with that being said, today's game I decided to do was the Boston Celtics versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. This took place on December 1st. Cleveland won the game 115 to 111. And the reason why I chose this is why I just told you guys. This is the very first game, in my opinion, with some type of significance, in my opinion. So Cleveland winning that game, it allowed them to keep the number 1 seed. Yes, no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White in this game, but Boston was up by about 12 points midway through the fourth. And then they kind of went cold and missed about 7 to 8 shots after that and allowed Cleveland to get back in the game. Donovan Mitchell was just on one in the fourth quarter too. Donovan Mitchell for me is one of those players, and I'm pretty sure it's for most of you guys too. He's one of those guys when we watch him play and he's like in a rhythm. It's just fun. It's just an amazement. It's fun to watch. He makes tough shots. He makes really crazy like floaters off the glass. I love when he does that. But yeah, so shout out to Donovan Mitchell. He was just on one, But also during that stretch, Cleveland played pretty good defense. Peyton Pritchard, I thought one thing that was really funny was Peyton Pritchard backed down Darius Garland towards the end of the game. So to me, that was just kind of funny. It just kind of showed how small Darius Garland is. Peyton Pritchard's kind of stocky, a little stocky dude. But yeah, I thought that was just really funny. anyways, I wanted to talk about this game just because, like I said, it had a little significance to it. Like I said, it allowed Cleveland to hold on to the number 1 seed. I also was considering talking about the Clippers versus Minnesota game because I just felt like that was a very gritty game. But I didn't have the time to really write down what I really wanted to say about that game. But also, I kind of talked about the game briefly earlier, the Houston Rockets versus Oklahoma City Thunder. That was a pretty big game, too. And Houston obviously won that game, so now they're only a half a game behind OKC for the first seed. So I think that's just crazy, But also, I got to pat myself on the back because I had Ime Udoka and I had Mosley as well on my Coach of the Year ballots. So they're performing pretty well, I might have say. So shout out to H-Town. And even shout out to Cleveland for holding on to the number 1 seed. So that's games of the week. Now, again, I didn't have that much time this last week like I just told you guys. But down in the comment section below, let me know what games this last week you guys really enjoyed. And let's just have an open dialogue about that. Because, again, like I said, I didn't talk about as many games as I could have. But, again, I'm just trying to make sure these episodes are not too long. So that's games of the week. My last segment, and that is Rookie Talk, okay? So my last segment, as I just said, is Rookie Talk. Now, in Rookie Talk, if you didn't get to watch my the earlier part of this episode, I just kind of want to let you know what Rookie Talk entails. It's essentially just me talking about the rookies. Like it's that black and white. It's that transparent. It's just me talking about the rookies, about rookies I like, rookies that may have somewhat disappointed up to this point, or rookies like I didn't like. Today's episode, we're only going to do one rookie. But normally, if again, this is your first time checking out my episode, I usually do about 2 to 3 rookies, but today I'm only going to do one just because, like I said, time wise, I just haven't had the time to really do it. But the one that I'm going to do, and I kind of talked about him over the last couple weeks, like briefly during this segment, and that's Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle right now is averaging 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists. He's averaging 2 turnovers, 1 steal. He's shooting 39% from the field, 29% from 3, and 71% from the free throw line. Amongst rookies, he's 4th in points. He's 18th in rebounding, and he's 2nd in assists. So don't be fooled by his averages and what he's averaging, because if you're watching these games, you see the impacts he's having with his aggressiveness offensively on his drives, but also his defensive intensity. So just remember that, okay? As a starter, his numbers get a lot better, okay? I promise you. As a starter, he's actually averaging 14 points, 4.5 assists, 3 rebounds, and 1 steal. He's shooting 41% from the field, 33% from 3, and 76% from the free throw line. I think this time next year is when we'll really see the impact Chris Paul had on Stephon Castle. I literally talked about this during my San Antonio Spurs season preview, that I felt that Chris Paul was going to take Castle under his wing and really show him how to be a point guard. And because I know that was something Castle really wanted to make, evident that, hey, I'm a point guard. I'm not a shooting guard. So I think this time next year, I think spend an offseason with Chris Paul, but obviously going through the rest of this year as well. Because you see it even during the games, Chris Paul will pull him to the side and tell him some things. But yeah, so I chose Castle this week, and I think for sure long-term, Castle is a glue guy for this team moving forward, and I love his size, I love the intensity he brings. Shout out to Stephon Castle. But also, I just want to also highlight as a side note, I literally last week was the first week that I talked about rookies that have disappointed up to this point or just haven't had the playing time. And one of them was Montes Buzelis, and just ironically, as I did this last week, the Chicago Bulls actually started giving him a little bit more playing time. And just a couple nights ago, or it was last night, it might have been last night, he had a 20-point game on pretty efficient shooting. But I just thought that was funny because honestly, if you've been keeping up with me all season long, or you've even been following me since the summer, a lot of the things I have said have come to fruition either that next week or just a couple months later. So I just, I'm on to something. There's a reason why I'm doing this podcast, okay? Is because I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this at all, because I'm not. But I'm very progressive. I think I give out very good information to you guys. And also, I'm very much ahead of the curve, and I'm talking about a lot of things a lot of other podcasters and people on TV are not talking about. So I'm going to keep doing it, because every time I see that, it's like, dang, I just was talking about this, okay? But yeah, so I just wanted to give that to you guys because I thought that was an interesting side note and funny. But it also speaks to where I'm at. Like I said, the reason why I do this podcast is because I believe I view the NBA game a lot different than a lot of people. And I'm also, most of the time, not all the time, but about 85% of the time, I'm usually ahead of the curve with a lot of things. But yeah, so That is the conclusion to this episode. I want to thank you guys for spending the time to check out my podcast. I would greatly appreciate it if you could like the video or even share the content with your friends or family or other basketball lovers. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. PJ's out.